Welcome to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions, the podcast where real life meets big dreams. I'm Johanna, your host, and every episode will dive into inspiring stories from PAs, doctors, and professionals who are also dreamers and mission-driven changemakers. From the hospital halls to the hearts of our homes, and even into communities across the world, we'll laugh, learn, and uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between as we see life through each other's perspectives. Looking for more joy and balance in your career? Don't miss our free guide, How to Be a Fulfilled Provider, your quick boost of encouragement with tips to help you thrive while juggling all your hats you wear. And if you've got little dreamers at home, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams on Amazon. These stories are meant to spark imagination, courage, and kindness, perfect for bedtime or anytime. Follow along as Evie, a little Sri Lankan girl, brings joy and creativity to her community while daring to dream big. This podcast is also brought to you with love by the Reframe Foundation International, because empowering children and families in rural Sri Lanka isn't just charity, it's continuing a legacy of hope and creating futures full of possibility. So grab your cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Welcome back to Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. In today's episode, I'm so excited to be joined again by Kristin Burton. She's the founder of Millionaires in Medicine, a movement helping clinicians take control of their finances, rewrite limiting beliefs, and build lives rooted in freedom and purpose. Kristin has shared her journey previously on another episode, which you should definitely listen into. From paying off her over $160,000 student loans to becoming a millionaire in her early 30s. But more importantly, today she's unpacking the mindset shifts that made that transformation possible. We talk about what it really means to step into ownership, not just of your career, but of your calling. We explore the power of stewardship, the freedom that comes with financial literacy, and how generosity and mission can coexist beautifully with success. Whether you're a PA, pharmacist, or health provider who's feeling stuck in the system, this conversation will challenge the way you think about work, wealth, and what it means to live abundantly, so you can create a life that reflects your values, serves your family, and fuels your faith-driven mission. So thank you again, Kristin, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm actually thrilled that this is the topic of today because really this is probably my favorite aspect of money to talk.
Yeah, I think, a lot of us get stuck in this idea that, our work is our security, especially in medicine. Healthcare is always seen like a job security, and we kind of lose that freedom when we focus more on like just this job is our, security, everything comes from it. Um, so, this steady paycheck, steady job, when did you realize that mindset was actually limiting your freedom?
That is a great question. And for me, it came later than I would have liked, but it
Uh,
came actually not from being in community with medical professionals. It came when I decided to start my own business and went into the world of entrepreneurs. For whatever reason, in the space of medicine, mindset is rarely discussed, and in that space, mindset is considered key in a lot of circles. And so as I surrounded myself with a different group of people than I had spent most of my time with as an adult, I started to hear conversations a little bit differently, and people were talking about limiting beliefs and abundance versus scarcity and those kind of key terms that were totally unfamiliar to me. And I realized pretty quickly, okay, I've been stuck in most of the what would be considered the negative mindset space.
yeah,
And in order for me to actually make some substantial change in my life, that was going to have to precede any kind of circumstantial change was going to be, I have to change the way that I think. And really, that is an ongoing journey for me and something I'm quite literally still working on every single day.
yeah. It's so funny that you say that in healthcare, mindset is definitely not like the first on the list of things that we need to change or think about, because you would think that our health and our well-being would be something that is associated with our mindset, right? And our how we think of life. And I think, that's a huge, huge aspect of things that we do need to talk about more in healthcare and well-being is that mindset shift as well, especially, giving disease diagnoses and chronic illness or acute illness and just the mindset of patient care too. But that's another topic for another day. But it's so interesting how, mindset doesn't come near the top of the list when we're thinking
It
about
should.
healthcare. Yeah.
It should, but you're absolutely right, it does not.
And so how does owner or an owner think differently about time, money, impact compared to that employee kind of way of thinking or an
Mm.
employee clinician?
This actually, I think, is one of the keys, making this mental shift from
Mhm.
employee to owner. It's actually one of the keys to making more money even as an employee, which is funny. But this, at its core, the employee, and I'll use PAs for an example, says, "Hey, I'm gonna work here. I'm gonna do my job. I need to be paid XYZ." And most of that lens is through the lens of I've got the student loan payment, I've got these bills, housing costs have increased, etcetera. This is what I need to be supported. The owner mindset, whether you're like the true owner of the business, right? But having the owner mindset says, okay, this is a business that I'm being a part of, and I can only be compensated really from profits, right? Like if I'm not generating revenue, the business can't pay me. And so then you switch yourself, your viewpoint from the lens of what do I need to live to how can I increase revenue or increase profits for this business that I'm a part of. You take ownership of your job in a different way when you look at it through that lens. And then you also completely shift the ground that you're standing on when you go to negotiate because you move from a space of pay me, I'm your employee, to let's make a win-win situation. And because I'm bringing so much value to you, it's very obvious that that value should be returned in compensation. And so even you can make that subtle shift as an employee and it can make a difference. But if you take that approach to the rest of your life and you say things to yourself like, maybe my income at my W-2 job is capped, but my personal income is limitless. How can I add value and create value that turns into monetization? How can I go out and, whether it's something like buy a rental property, fix it up, put tenants in it, right? That's adding value to the marketplace. So you're earning something from that, or like starting a business yourself. There's so many different ways you can do it. But when you take the ownership lens, you start asking yourself, where is my time gonna create the most impact in terms of not only, like, money, but just, like, life satisfaction? And you start to reorder how things are set up and what you're willing or not willing to do. That shift, I actually think is probably one of the first shifts that you need to make if you actually want to become successful beyond what you can do in, like, the classic healthcare job workplace.
Yeah, I think an important thing that you did mention was that sometimes we don't think as an owner, even in our current jobs or W 2 jobs, because we're feeling like we are not invested in that job, but we should because we are invested in the patient care and how the facility or the environment we're working in functioning. And if we shift that little thought process there, we can maybe bring more to the table and hopefully, change the way we earn as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's better for everyone, right? If you're in any business and every person around you takes full ownership of it, they're going to work at a different level of excellence than someone who's like, I'm just here to do my stuff and leave.
Right, exactly. I mean, that makes a huge difference anywhere you go is when you have that investment mindset,
Yes.
which I think is the underlying, you know, um, important topic. So, what are some daily habits or thought patterns that helped you make that mental transition? Because I know it probably didn't come overnight.
No. And again, still working on it. I'm not sitting here as I've perfected this. I will say one habit that I've had that's really helped is a combination of principles from a bunch of different areas. It actually says in the Bible to take every thought captive. And I have found that actually doing that and then applying Byron Katie's work to that has been one of the most powerful ways I've actually figured out what beliefs I have and what thoughts I have that don't serve me. So what I'll do, this is actually really simple. I write it down in my phone, like, because I always have my phone with me, right? We're all addicted.
Yeah.
Anytime I have a negative or bad thought. And so, like, let's say, I might be looking for a new job. Let's say I've applied for many new jobs and I keep getting the no's before I even get the interview. Like, I get booted out by the AI algorithm in my search for an MSL job. I'll have thoughts like, I'm never going to get one of these. It's so hard. Then I'll write it down in my phone. You can't really, at least I can't, in the rush of the day, kind of attack that. So I'll just jot it down. And then in the morning, before my kids wake up, before I do anything else, I have a little bit of time with my journal and I'll take those thoughts that I had on my phone and I'll write it down. And then I'll apply a 4-question exercise. It's actually stolen from Byron Katie. She calls it the work. And it kind of walks you through crushing the belief. You'll ask questions like, is it true? Is it absolutely 100% true? Who are you with the thought? Like, what are the emotions that you carry with a thought? Who does it shape you into being? And then who would you be without it? And so in that example, I would say, like, well, is that thought true? On the surface, it seems like maybe it is. I've applied a bunch of times, I've failed. Well, is it absolutely 100% true? Okay, no, probably not, right? I've only applied 7 times. Some people apply 27 times before they get a job. So I can't say it's 100% true that I won't ever get this. It's just hard. Then when you go to question 3, it's like, well, who am I with this thought? Well, I'm defeated. I'm powerless. I'm the victim. I'm kind of frustrated. I'm tired of trying. And my overall confidence is damaged. Who would I be without the thought? Well, I would be the person who knows that I have a lot of clinical value, that I have skills, that I care well for patients, that I'm have perseverance, that I have grit, that if I continue the effort, I'll probably see the result. And then as you're writing all this down, you go, "Oh yeah, 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 that thought doesn't serve me," and you kind of switch it off in your mind. This process has actually helped me a ton, but it's not like a one and done. It's something that you kind of have to evaluate all of the time. What am I thinking about? What do I believe? And then really find some time, even 10 minutes a day to sit with yourself and go, is that even right? And replace it with something that's more powerful.
Yeah. That's an amazing, amazing tip, and actually such a great way to look at things because usually we think about writing the good things and writing all the positives that we feel, but taking that aspect of switching the negative and then actually confronting those negative thoughts that we're actually thinking about a lot more than we think we are, and confronting those and evaluating exactly why we think those negative thoughts and realizing the lie behind those negative thoughts and creating a solution to a problem that we may have. That's like so brilliant. I love that.
I did not make it up.
That's amazing. I love it. And so that is a great thing. Hopefully, people can incorporate more of. I think I will do that too.
It's really helpful.
Yeah.
And then sometimes you look at it and you're like, how did I have so many negative thoughts yesterday? But, it's just like, it's good to reflect on that and
Mhm.
really take stock of what's going on.
Yeah. It's also good if you write it down, then you can see the growth that you have had over a period of time in what you've seen in your own life.
Yes.
And so, for someone who's listening that still loves patient care, though, but feels stuck in the system,
Mhm.
where can they start shifting their mindset without quitting their job right away?
Yes. So this is me. Like that literally was me. And I still work because I like medicine. Like I
Yeah.
love the complexity of it. I like the patient care aspect of it.
Mhm.
I'm a critical care person, so I'm an adrenaline junkie. I love like an impending cardiac arrest. These things are like they're exciting to me.
Yeah.
And so I felt that. I felt stuck, like I have no trajectory. And I think
Mhm.
as PAs, we feel that a lot because there isn't always a next step clinically. Like once you become a PA, you can become a really good PA, but a lot of times it's like they don't allow PAs to sit on XYZ leadership committee. You can't do this,
Mhm.
that, or the other. And so it's like, well, what do I do next? Right.
Mhm.
I felt that. I felt really stuck. And so what I have ultimately figured out is there are a lot of ways to take your clinical skills and repurpose them non clinically, or even use non clinical skills too. But you can go out there and you can do so many different things to generate income or assets outside of your job in medicine. You have to leave it. But
Mhm.
then once you've done it, once you've created the other income stream or you created the asset base, you own the job differently because you don't have to work at it, right? Like, you can do it if you want, if it serves you, and like, if it gets to a point where it doesn't serve you, you can take a break, you can take a sabbatical, you can go, "I'm gonna take 6 months off in between a job transition.
Mhm.
I'm gonna go, reduce my hours or be part-time." And so you allow your love of medicine to last because it's no longer forced upon you to earn money, and so you kind of prevent your own burnout by fixing the money stuff, which is funny. People don't think it's related, but it is 1,000% related. You show up
Mhm.
very differently to work when you don't need the money and you're there just because you feel like being.
Yeah, that is so true. Um, I love how you framed that entire thing because it's 100% right, is how we go to work if we are feeling just like slaves to the paycheck because we can't get out of that cycle. We're broken and we become even more broken and we get broken down by the burnout. And we have to like step back and see how we can change that ownership or find that ownership. But that's kind of the problem sometimes is we're scared to step out and find those avenues and sometimes just fear to understand even like how to even take that first step, right?
Yep. And you know what? That fear will just like stop you right in your tracks and prevent you from ever becoming the person that you could have been. Because it does not matter what you're trying to do. If you're like, hey, I'm going to try to go get a gig speaking for a pharmaceutical company, but I'm afraid of how other clinicians would perceive me if I went to try to give them a presentation,
Mhm.
all the way up to like, I want to start a business. If you allow that to be the thing that stops you from ever making the move, you'll walk down your professional life with just a whole series of regrets of missed opportunity. When I think in reality, very few people actually ever regret taking the chance. You
Mhm.
fail, you learn, you get some stories, you move on. I think real regret actually comes from being like, I've kind of just done nothing. And I knew I could have done something and I chose not to because I was afraid.
Yeah, exactly. And what are some other few small mindset shifts that can help people take them to that ownership of their time and career before making the significant changes that they may have to?
Before making significant changes, I would say this. When you're going to try to like make a shift like this, like let's say you have your day job in medicine and that's kind of it. And you have this vision of like, I want to be financially independent outside of this job. Maybe it's a different income stream, maybe it's just like an asset base that cash flows. But there's a big gap, right, between like where you are and where you want to be. You can end up really deterring yourself if you spend too much time before you take steps trying to figure out what the shifts are that need to happen inside you. I would say first, just start taking some micro steps. You will learn so much about yourself and the mindset shifts you have to make along the way. If you would have asked me at the beginning of my journey, I couldn't have even told you what the things were that were going to hold me back because I just didn't even know.
Mhm.
And then once you step in, you realize, like, I'll give you an example of one of mine. I had a true perfectionist mentality. Like, I wanted every single thing I touched to turn perfect.
Mhm.
And then as I took steps in, like, I'm going to start a business, well, those things don't go together. Like, you can't execute on any type of small business if you think you're going to have everything be perfect because it doesn't work like that at the beginning. You'll never get anything done. You have to do everything yourself.
Yeah.
And so I quickly figured out, like, that's a mindset shift I'm gonna have to make. where I'm gonna have to start accepting 80% of perfection, good is done, right? But I couldn't have told you that at the beginning. It's like sometimes the messiness of action is what presents to you the things that really need to shift inside of you for you to overcome that obstacle and get to the next step. It's hard when you're just in reflection mode. You almost have to be in motion mode and then pause for reflection as you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, sometimes we can get frozen in time in our like circumstances. And I think just, even from a personal example, me and my husband were like, how do we get out of student loan debt and all these different things? And how do we, do these steps? How do we, start? And it was so frightening because it felt so overwhelming. But once we actually made the steps to change and like ask the right people for help, it was like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this earlier? Why didn't we start earlier? Because then once you start going, you feel that burden releasing
Yes.
because you see the positive impact and change in your own life. But, it is overwhelming. You feel frozen, you're fearful because, like, how it's overwhelming, but and especially with finances, but once you do ask the right people for help and make those changes, things will start to work out.
I do like what you said too about reaching out for people to help
Mhm,
you along the way. I
mhm.
think so much of us, like, we get so nervous of what other people are gonna think or if we're gonna be
Yeah,
judged, but I have found the only people that ever judge you for you trying to step out and do something different are
mhm.
people that have never done it. And
Yeah,
if you find people that are doing the thing you want to do and you ask them for help, the ubiquitous answer is almost always, Of course it can be done, and here's
yeah,
some pearls to help you get there." I mean, literally
exactly.
right up until 2 minutes before you and I hopped on here, I was on a call with a PA who, like, had said, "Hey, I'm trying to start a business. Do you have any tips?" And I'm like, "Sure, I've got about 1,000,000." So it's no one
Mhm.
will ever fault you for that, and you will get
Yeah,
so much further, so much faster if you just find some folks that are doing the thing and mirror them.
yeah, exactly. And so, that leads into like this financial freedom. Once you get over that, letting go of the fear and letting go of that, not wanting to take the steps, how do you define that financial freedom in your own life? And has that perspective changed over time?
Yes. It's funny. If you would have asked me like 2 years ago, I would have said financial freedom is a number. It is not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It's a mathematical destination. And that is the truth, right? At some point, you get to a position where you say, hey, my assets cover my expenses indefinitely. I am financially independent. Check. It is a real mathematical destination. But I have found over the years of helping medical professionals on their own money journeys that financial freedom can be a little bit more gray and can actually arrive before financial independence.
Mhm,
What I mean by that is, for a lot of us, we don't necessarily need to say, I can never work again in my life and live out my days in order to feel that financial freedom. What a lot of us want is something that's a middle ground. Maybe it's like, "Hey, I want to have the ability to go part-time when I have kids so I can be home. Hey, I want the ability to take a lower paying job because I'm tired of working evenings and weekends." Those abilities, which come from achieving certain financial metrics, right? Those abilities can give a lot of the financial freedom feelings that we're looking for, even before we ever arrive at a true mathematical financial independent destination. So I would say if you are creating a path to give yourself at least a version of financial freedom that you're after in the next few years, knowing, hey, this is also my timeline to arrive at the real mathematical financially independent destination as well,
mhm.
you're doing it right. And that's really what we show people how to do is to find a path that arrives at both so that you
Mhm.
can have what you want now with that freedom, but also you don't miss the mark on the back end of ensuring that at some point you do have to be prepared to never work again because you'll either be old enough that you won't be physically able to, or your health or something else will step in and say, you're done.
Yeah, yeah. And once you have gained more control over your finances and schedule, how did that translate into freedom to give or serve or live out a mission that you may have always wanted to do?
Great question. My personal answer is twofold. And when consider my top missions in life, one of which would be in service to my community through charitable action. A lot of that for us comes through our church. And then two, my other mission is motherhood. Ironic.
Yeah.
And really, like, those 2 things are the ability to do those 2 things those are
Uh-huh.
my financial freedom feelies, right? And
Yeah.
so those 2 things, like, the ability to do those 2 things well are my, like, financial mission in the short term. And so what I have been able to do is arrange investable assets to the point that I was able to reduce hours to facilitate the motherhood piece. For me,
Mhm.
that's how I wanted that to look. It's not true for everybody. And then in addition, still have the cash flow abilities to impact charitably the way we wanted to. That's something that we personally scale every single year, as like our own marital challenge to each other of how can we even take bigger steps in that arena. And
Okay.
so the two things had to come together for me to be kind of fulfilled on all fronts. And the only way that they were able to come together was because of the decisions I made in the 5 to 7 years preceding that of how I structured money. If I would have woken up like, 6 months before I wanted this to all come to fruition, we couldn't have done it. But
Mhm.
with having, like, that vision of this is what I want life to look like before I'm there, it gave me enough runway to do what I needed to do with money to make it happen.
Yeah. I think sometimes we get stuck in like, you know, wealth or earning, that financial freedom is just all about that statistical number or that financial goal. But it is a way that we can maybe live out those missions that we have always wanted to. Like you're saying, the motherhood aspect, the freedom to choose how we want to have our days or giving and having ability to fund those other charitable missions that we may want to because I think that also speaks to purpose and calling because everyone in medicine feels they have a calling to help others and have that and I think sometimes we feel that just going after the financial goals is taking away from our purpose or calling or our fulfillment in helping others. How would you kind of talk to that kind of aspect?
Actually say it's the exact opposite. I really would. I think the
Mhm,
more that you have your own personal finances in line, the easier it is for you to live life on mission. Because
mhm.
when you don't have that, when you have to work X number of hours to get paid, you're feeling like you're running out of money at the end of every paycheck, you don't get to make decisions based on how do I want to impact the world? How do I want to impact my family? How do I want to show up today? You're making survival decisions, right? You're just trying to get by. But the more that you can actually come out of that and come into a place of financial abundance, now you have the choice. And you can really sit and ask yourself, and this is really a genuine gift, how do I want to impact the world? That's a conversation you don't get to have when you're living in scarcity. And so the two might seem like they're not in alignment, but I would actually challenge you that I think that's a limiting belief. And when you really examine it, maybe by asking those 4 questions, it proves not as true as you might think.
Yeah, I think we can get stuck in that aspect of just we're fulfilled in this calling, in this work, but it's actually not as fulfilling or purposeful if we're constantly being burned out or constantly just running after that paycheck. And we kind of fool ourselves into thinking we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, but maybe we're missing out on more because we're not actually really, from the beginning of the talk, evaluating all those things in our lives that may be negative, and we're not confronting those things full force on. And so, many people, yeah, fear that pursuing wealth might make them less mission minded, But as you said, the financial freedom helps them reframe money as a tool for impact and generosity. And then how can we begin to view giving of time, resources, or influence not as a loss, but as a form of leadership and impact? Because sometimes we can get to a point where we're like, also just hoarding or like feeling like the scarcity mindset. That's where that comes into play too, I think.
I think that charitable giving is a little bit unique and it starts in some capacity at any phase of the financial journey, whether you're at a position of financial freedom or you're not and you're really still like struggling to get by. And that can look, again, really different numerically, but you do have to start thinking about from the very beginning, no matter where you are in your money journey, who am I if my mindset about money is that every dollar that comes into me is mine and I've got to hold it with this really tight fist? Versus who am I when I view money that comes into my life as a tool that I can use not only to help my family, right? But also to help people around me. That mindset shift doesn't really matter how much money is coming in or how much money that you have. If you have a really hard time giving your neighbor 20 bucks when you only have 100, you're going to have just as hard a time writing a $10,000 check to your local children's museum as a donation when you have a million, right? It doesn't really matter the numbers. It matters your lens of money itself and what it's meant for. So I would encourage you to really evaluate that no matter where you are, even if you're at the very beginning of your money journey. Think about that lens, and when something comes up, when there's an opportunity for someone to be served near you, what are your thoughts surrounding that? What are the first things that pop into your head? Is it, how can I help? What can I do? Or is it like, someone else should help them. I don't have enough. I can't, right? Those kind of thoughts, they should go down in the journal and the 4 questions should be applied until you kinda work through some of that and recognize that, hey, it doesn't matter where we're at financially, we can all probably find some way to serve.
Yeah. And I think, like, I remember you speaking about this earlier this year on charitable giving and how you were talking about how sometimes when we give, no matter where we are on that journey, it makes you kind of feel like when you're giving, you're having that, freedom and having an ability to be like, I was able to give this and I still am able to do this. And that gives us this like financial freedom a little bit on or that towards that journey of financial freedom in our minds, not just, monetarily, but that in that mindset. Is that correct?
Yes, and honestly, this topic is something that I think has it depends on, obviously, your view of the world. It can be like a spiritual thing, it can be whatever, but I do feel like when you give freely, there is this beautiful way that, like, things just come back to you for that. Maybe not immediately, but they do. This actually, I wrote a children's book about money, and the part about giving, I compare it to a boomerang. Like, when you're going out and you're finding ways to use your money to serve other people in the world, it just seems that money flows to you, right? Maybe the raise comes that you weren't expecting. You get this windfall, you get a bonus, this great paying side hustle comes up. And it's almost just like this path of when you stop holding everything with such a tight fist and you start really looking through the lens of being a steward of what you receive, more comes. I don't know of any factual proof of that, but man, oh man, after a lot of years of doing money, it just really seems to be the case.
Yeah. And I think that goes into my next question, kind of like with the thought process of stewardship and healthy boundaries, principles that you might use to make sure generosity flows from purpose and not guilt or burnout, too. Just to talk about that perspective as well. Because how do you make sure that it flows from purpose and not guilt or burnout?
Say it really depends on the words you use when you talk to yourself about it, to your partner about it, and when you decide like how to approach it. So if you say like, what do we get to give this year? And what kind of impact can we make this year? That language feels different than if you're like, well, we need to fit giving into the budget.
Mhm.
And so it starts really small and subtly. But if you are finding yourself giving without that outlet of like, you feel like it's an obligation, you probably need to evaluate why you're doing it in the first place. Maybe it's a complete wrong cause. It's not tied enough to your heart. And so when you go to do it, it doesn't really feel in alignment. Maybe make a shift. We all have different things that really tug at our heartstrings, and you could just be looking at giving in a way that's maybe not the best for you. But I do think there is a way where you can find a cause that you align with well enough that when you go to make that charitable contribution, it is an I get to moment, not an I have to moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, just going along with that too is like when we give freely and give without expectation, I think that's so freeing too, because we're able to be like, in a selfish way, really, because giving charity and generosity is kind of a selfish kind of motive in the end, because it's like a dopamine spike again, and so it makes you feel better, which, it shouldn't be selfishly motivated, but, it does, have that effect on you when you do give, because that is something that we as humans, I think, are built that way to be like, when we give, when we serve, when we love others, there is some kind of reciprocation of joy and a peaceful feeling that we can have too. When we give freely and without that expectation. Because if we have expectations, then that also leads to guilt and burnout. Because with generosity, because then you never know. You have to always have like, give freely. Yeah,
Yes.
sometimes, but wisely, everything with wisdom. How do you like, because you talked about stewardship. So how do you like talk about stewardship just to bring in your children? I know your children are like very young now, but you talked about the children's book. How do you talk about stewardship?
That's a really good question. We have a system that we use with money for my daughter, who's just about 4, where we have the jars, give, save, spend, and invest, that she allocates her weekly funds into. And I just allow that giving jar to prompt a conversation. And so, like, we just did this on Sunday. And as she decided to put some money in there, I said, hey, like, who would you like to help give this to? Or like, who would you think we could help with this money? And she said something random, like, oh, I want to help Miss Hannah, who's like one of her babysitters. And I'm like, okay, what makes you want to help her? And we just kind of talk about like what we could do with it. I think for me at this age, the key is for me to help her see need. Like, it's just that. It's just to help her see need, and then to foster that little prompting of, "Maybe I could help." And that's kind of where it stops at for us at the preschool age. I think the further along, our kids go in age, we'll get into a little bit more advanced topics of, like, how can you make the most impact? What are some ways we could serve and we could impact more people than maybe just Miss Hannah? But like for now, that's my main goal, is just to say, hey, this is money we're putting towards this purpose. Let's look around and recognize when someone might need some help. Talk about what it might make them feel like if we chose to help them, and kind of keep it really small.
Yeah. I think that's some really good principles to learn from young ages, because that leads into those money mindsets as we grow into adults, that shift us from not just hoarding or not just wanting that wealth factor, but also using wealth as a way to impact the world in a better way, which I think should always be the case, because that leads to how we find more meaning in life when we are looking at things through that lens versus just us alone. And
Yes.
so,
Yeah. So right.
um, and if you could speak directly to a clinician who feels burned out, underpaid, and overwhelmed, what's one mindset shift you'd want them to walk away with today towards freedom and purpose?
Mm. Well, I wouldn't have to look too far to find a clinician like that because we all know we have them in droves. I would say the number one thing for you to internalize is that you are the creator of your life. If
Mhm.
you are religious, then you're the co creator of your life. But like you are the creator of your life. Every decision you made up until this point created these circumstances, which might depress you, but it should, in fact, inspire you because all that means is that you can make different decisions today and have different circumstances tomorrow. So if you like don't like the job and you're like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, well, then let's talk about how to create a semi-retirement where in 3 years you don't have to do that. If you're like, hey, this area of medicine that pays me more is too much and I would like a slower pace, well, then let's figure out how to create some cash flowing assets so that you can take a lower paying job and not take a pay cut, right? There's a million different solutions to that problem, but you have to first raise your hand and say, I created this. I can create something different, and I'm going to start making different choices. Those different choices usually have to do with taking a chance or learning something new, right? If you already knew how to do that stuff, you would have already done it. And so you'll have to really step out and be willing to put yourself in a different light. But the more willing you are to be a beginner in an arena, in the same way you were a beginner once in medicine, right?
Mhm.
The more likely you are to be able to create a different future where you really do have control over your professional life. It won't happen overnight. Anyone that tells you that it will is lying, but it can happen in a pretty short period of time, all things considered.
Yeah, and I think, it's just taking that step of first, getting that step out the door towards, that next chapter. Because I think we all can do it. Anyone can try and, make those changes no matter what the job, no matter what the income. Everyone has an opportunity to be an owner in their own journey, right? Towards financial freedom. And so, yeah, I think we all have that opportunity to take this step towards financial freedom, right? And it's not just for a selfish purpose. We're talking today about like a impactful, meaningful purpose behind financial freedom.
Absolutely. I mean, one of my big drivers, as I've said, was to be able to spend time with my kids. And like, I consider, my kids having memories
Mhm.
of me at the park with them on a Tuesday afternoon to be very, very impactful. And
Yeah.
that's, a huge motivation behind, I know a lot of people wanting to create some wealth for themselves. And so I do think we all as a community need to kind of separate ourselves from this view of anyone who wants to create assets or build wealth is an evil, selfish villain, and recognize, honestly, you can make a lot of people's lives better, including your
Mhm.
own families, if you walk down that path.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not just for super rich people, it's for
Right.
anyone to try, you know?
Yeah.
It's for anyone to start that journey and try. And so, finally, what does it mean to own your calling, not just your career, for you in your life?
For me, that's shifted over time. I think owning my calling has been recognizing that my professional life will look different in different life seasons. My calling will kind of ebb and flow, but that ultimately, as long as I'm doing something that I think serves people in a capacity, which right now is medicine, or in my business, and allows me to grow as a human being while I'm doing it, I'm on path. And then that might change, right? The mission might change, what my professional life looks like might change, but as long as I can do those 2 things, impact people positively and grow as a human in the process, you really can't go wrong. And so, I'll give myself a little bit of flexibility because I think the idea that, we're gonna take a job in medicine and do nothing else for 40 years is kinda gone. The flexibility really allows me to stay, like, moving forward and not stagnate, feeling like, "This is it, this is all I'm ever gonna be."
Yeah, I think options sometimes allow us to have that revitalizing of ourselves and renewing of our minds wherever we are, because if we feel stuck, we're going to get burned out. But if we feel like we have an option, then we'll do it out of passion and love and care. versus obligation. And I think that makes a huge difference in life, no matter what we do. And so tell us, though, final thoughts, because I think you're starting a new thing called the Freedom Prescription. Can you give us a little tidbit of information on that and any other information that would be relatable for the listeners out there?
Sure. So there's a system where we take you from here's where I'm at with money. We forecast out what do you want it to be? Do you want an early semi retirement? Do you want to retire early? Do you want to retire at 65, 67? What's the math for that? What does that look like? And then we backtrack it all the way to if this is the future that I want, then what do I need to do right now this month in order to make it happen? We build in the student loan strategy, of course. That's a big barrier for a lot of us. But then what is like the plan today that I can implement and automate so that when I look up in 3 years, I am able to go part-time or whatever that is, and my financial freedom plan is on track. It's the goal is for you to have implemented and automated these systems by the end of the 6 weeks.
Okay, that's awesome. And so, where can they find this information? And I will have links in the show notes available for people to click on. Okay. Okay, awesome. Wow, that sounds amazing. And as we kind of talked about, it's freedom in mindset in life, and it's worth so much more than we could ever imagine because we're talking about burnout and feeling stuck, which is such a huge topic and such a very important thing that's actually affecting a lot of people these days in medicine and in healthcare. So hopefully you all can check out that link below and see if you guys want to join in on Kristin's course to financial freedom. And thank you so much, Kristin, for joining me today. I think this was such an intriguing podcast episode and conversation. Hopefully it shines a light for others to kind of think differently.
Thank you. I so appreciate you having me. We need more people in medicine talking about mindset, especially surrounding money. So this was much needed, and I hope that we served your people well.
Thank you so much again. And thank you all for listening. Kristin reminds us that freedom isn't found in more ships or more paychecks or even more success. It's found in ownership of your mindset, your money, and ultimately your mission. What we learn to see wealth not as a destination, but as a tool, we open up the door to generosity, purpose, and peace. If today's conversation stirred something in you, maybe a desire to think differently about your career or finances, take that as an invitation. You don't have to choose between medicine or mission or between provision and purpose. You are made to live in alignment with all three. Thank you, Kristin, for reminding us that when we own our time, talent, and treasure, we can live and give from a place of abundance. Until next time, friends, now you keep serving with purpose, leading with faith, and dreaming big in medicine, motherhood, and mission. Thank you all again. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine, Motherhood, and Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical concerns or questions. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect